Hey, welcome back to Dealer Confidential, pulling the curtain back on dealership transactions. Greg, you ready for this one? This is going to be a high voltage one here.
Yeah, this one's a tough one in the sense that I always get these emails, and the email the emails, Al. I always get the email, and the question that was thrown at me 2 days ago was, "Hal is gonna sell this dealership for the most money he can get, and we're gonna try this to buy this dealership for the least amount of money that we can give. Who do we believe? Who do we trust? And how do you guys arrive at all these numbers and make it a fair deal for everybody?"
Yeah. Well, you just hit it. It's got to work for both sides. So think of it, Greg, like a picture of two circles that intersect. Okay. So you got the buyer circle and the seller circle. And what we as brokers try to do is maximize the overlap of those two circles so that both sides win. Without that intersection, I call it the intersection of interest. Without maximizing the intersection of interest, there is no deal, right? So it is not a I win, you lose type of proposition. So we want to get a fair price for the store. We want to get the buyer approved, and we want the buyer to have a business case that is worth the risk that he's taking, right? Otherwise, he just put his money in the stock market and take the 5 or 6 or 7% or whatever that percent is, and not the 25 or 30% operating investment that you can get with one of these stores. Of course, the risk is different, right? But it is all about buyer and seller winning. So it isn't a question of is Hal going to win or is Greg going to win? We're both going to win because we're going to do the best thing for our clients.
Yeah, and without a deal, there is no deal. So, and we're licensed brokers. We have fiduciary responsibilities to our clients on both sides. We're not going to violate that. We don't want to lose our license because we overvalued, undervalued, did something silly. It's not how we operate, and it's not how any good broker operates. So yeah, as Sal said before, we try to put the two circles together. Hopefully that middle section is the sweet spot.
Absolutely.
That's the home run. And we put it together, and then we have to make it work. So before that happens, we still have these two circles that we got to get together.
That's right.
And that's where Hal and I, work together in putting the deal package
Yeah.
into
All
a
these
presentable
all these
area.
deals, there's three things to all these deals. There's investment, there's return, and there's risk, right? And every deal's got a risk line, right? So what Greg and I try to do is balance that risk line between the seller and the buyer that both are they're comfortable or both are equally uncomfortable, if you want to put it that way. But and you get seller notes and earnouts and all that stuff, but which moves that risk line back and forth. But he's exactly right. We gotta structure it so that it's not just about price, it's about terms, it's about risk, structure, and the OEM's got to win too. If
Yeah.
the OEM doesn't win, then it doesn't matter if the buyer and the seller win.
Okay. Let's walk our listeners through this. First thing we do. What's the first thing you do from a seller side?
Well, I find out what the seller's goals are. I start with understanding the background of the business, how it got to be a business, what the seller wants out of the business, not just financially, but does he have a legacy motivation? What is he, how active does he want to be in the transition of the business? Are there key employees that he needs to take care of? Has he Can he take a vacation and have the business continue? I mean, what's the degree of owner dependency? There's all kinds of things that we look at when we're talking to a seller. And then after I understand the goals, I do an independent broker opinion of value. I go off, I take the financial statements, I recast, I pull comps, I talk to people, I call people like Greg and say, "Hey, what are you seeing in this brand, in this geography? Have you done anything? Do you know anybody that's recently bought?" All that kind of stuff. And it's data, but it's also industry contacts and experience, and that all gets rolled into a cash flow worksheet and pricing guideline that I review with the seller, get the seller's input in case I missed anything. I adjust that. I mean, it's not gospel. And if there's an alignment between what the seller needs and wants out of the business and what I think I can sell for, then there's 9 times out of 10 there's a listing agreement and we go to market. And I build the marketing materials, I build the teasers, I build the prospectuses, I do the qualifications, all the things that we talked about, due diligence, arranged financing, and the like.
It all sounds simple, doesn't it? What I do is, from my side, I caution my clients to the fact that this could take months, and it probably will take months. Just the appraisal, as what we're talking about today, what's the dealership valued at? That could take months to come to a reasonable price because Hal is dealing with the seller. I'm potentially dealing with the buyer, but the buyer hasn't stepped into this yet. It's all Hal at this point because Hal has to determine what the value of the property is, what the value of the franchise is. And more importantly, what does the dealer want moving forward? Does he expect a huge windfall that's maybe unrealistic? Then Hal has to get to work. He has to reel him in, has to say, listen, your price is not going to work. There's no way in the world. Or we have to educate him as to why that price will work. And then after that's done, Hal does all his work. And that's when I take a look at this thing and say, okay, it's valued at X. Maybe it should be valued at Y, but let's see if we can find someone who wants to pay for this and really move this thing forward. So until that moment in time, we don't have a deal. And more importantly, without Hal's evaluation of the dealership, we don't have a deal. It's that simple. The
Yeah.
valuation of the dealership, we talk about OEM approval, we talk about banking, but without the proper evaluation, we don't have a deal. We
Yeah.
don't even have the concept of a deal. So everything is on Hal's shoulders right now until we come up with that deal. And then it flips over to me as to how we and who and what and where we find someone willing to pay that.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the factors that influence how I go about setting a value and then communicating a value. And they're both internal factors and external factors. You might say external. How would the external? We'll talk about that. So the first obvious one is cash flow, right? Just the amount of cash flow. The more the better, the better, right? The higher the cash flow, the higher the value. We've talked about clean financials. We talked about getting your house in order, your corporate governance, if you will. Your employee handbook, your regulatory, your legal. Do you have open positions? Fill them. So if you've got a talented management team, if you can go on vacation for a month and that dealership doesn't miss a beat, that's a value driver. That's that's a plus. When I'm talking to Greg about selling this deal, and I say to him, this team is talented, it's motivated, it's trained, and they're loyal because loyalty and the dealership team sticking together is a really important value component. When I say that to Greg, then he's going to be able to convey that to a buyer, and it's going to give the buyer confidence that he can step in to the owner's chair and the dealership doesn't miss a beat. And he can work on growth. That's another value driver, growth potential. So we want to represent good dealerships, right? But Greg and I will both look for growth drivers. What do we communicate to a buyer that they can do to take the dealership to the next level? Because no one buys a store and says, I've never run into a buyer yet that says, I want to buy this store and not improve it at all. I just want to keep it where it is. Everybody wants to look for that next level. And Greg and I's job is to identify those four or five things that there's opportunity to grow to the next level. And
Yeah.
that's and to the extent that we're able to do that, that's value.
And when you do work with us, be prepared to answer questions. Some easy ones, some hard ones. I'll just bring up one that happened recently a few months ago to a deal that Hal and I are working on together. It's a dealership in Pennsylvania. I won't mention the brand. Nice little store, and we ended up selling it. But what the dealer didn't share with us, and he didn't do it out of negligence, he did it because it was just a matter of fact, is that he had a contract with the state police department to service their vehicles. And you would, if you go to the dealership every once in a while, Hal and I would say there'd be a state trooper's car there, one or two, but he had a contract for this that region of the state, and it was never fully realized and materialized because he never marketed properly, had sort of kind of an inside person to handle it. But that turned out to be a huge gold mine for the new potential dealer because he ended up hiring, remember, he ended up hiring an individual to handle those kind of work orders and contracts and calling up the state police and ferrying cars back and forth. They bought a couple extra cars that they could lend to the state police to use on an interim basis when their cars were in service. It turned out to be not a gold mine, but a great profit center that no one really realized until we started to get into, hey, what's that car doing on the lot? Remember that, how as
Oh,
simple
yeah.
as that,
No,
what are
you
those state trooper cars doing here?
that's something you'll probably never find in a SIM, a confidential information memorandum, the prospectus, but it's such an important. I mean, that's a reoccurring revenue. It's a relationship that's in place. They're comfortable with the dealership service department and the quality that they're getting out of that, and the buyer walks into that, it's a gold mine. And it's a huge value driver and not one that's easily recognized or maybe even appreciated from that standpoint.
And I don't think we put it into the value. I don't think we did in the
No,
dealership when we
no,
evaluated
it's
it
one of those
originally.
intangibles. It's part of goodwill, but you know, how much, right?
Yeah.
How much, you know?
So be prepared when Hal does the initial evaluation to bring up, if you're a seller, bring up everything
Oh,
because
yeah.
everything has value. You may, that parts business that you have, wholesale parts business on the side to X number of body shops or whatever, huge opportunity. The body
Yeah.
shop, huge opportunity.
Yeah.
We've been talking
Yeah.
about all of these things. So if you're the seller, please tell us everything you got because everything more or less has a value. And that's what we're talking about today is the deal valuing this dealership, the hidden value, the obvious value, and more importantly, the potential value that we'll see in the dealership
Yeah.
that maybe the seller doesn't see and definitely the buyer doesn't see because this is all new to him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of one of those little hidden gems. And
Yeah.
that's what this webcast is all about. You know that CSI and cash flow and brand equity and long tenured, you know, a dealership that's been in business 30 years, if all things considered, is going to be more valuable than a dealership that's been in operation 3 years, right? Because 30-year store has been through the global financial crisis and the dot coms and the covids and all of the ups and downs, right? And proven that they're still here. And the 3-year old business hasn't seen that kind of degree of macroeconomic variance. What's another one, Greg?
Yeah.
I think yeah, go ahead.
The we talked about property evaluation already in podcasts in the past. We've talked about real estate valuation. Now let's talk about some of the hidden. I just brought up one of the hidden contracts that's longstanding. What about the database?
The
What
customer
value
data
does that
yeah.
database have? Customer database, client database in the sense of wholesale clients and or paying customers that are not your normal purchasers, business customers, I should say. What value does that, and how do you properly evaluate what that's worth to the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, it does to the degree that you mine that database,
Yeah, that's it.
that you exploit that database. I mean, customers that have come in and you've satisfied, it's a springboard for continued revenue because they're gonna talk to what, 5, 10, 20 people about what happened at ABC, Motors. And it's gonna be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's gonna be a linchpin for the future growth without even really spending a nickel of marketing value. So as Greg points out, I mean, the social media report card that comes out of a satisfied customer, a Google review or a Yelp review or a Facebook comment. They're all the neighborhood, internet portal that everybody, hey, I'm looking for a plumber or this, I'm looking to buy a new car. I mean, you can't replace that. I mean, that is such an important value driver, and it rolls into that goodwill value, intangible. It's hard to put a dollar figure on it, really,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
we
important.
have to. We have to put a dollar figure on that because especially as you said before, the magic word is mining, especially if the selling dealer has really cultivated that mailing list and that database and that referral base
Yeah,
and the outside business base, his wholesale business that he sells parts
yeah,
and
yeah.
services to.
The BDC, a dealership that's got a really well run virtual showroom. There's the physical showroom, but the virtual showroom is where the action really is.
How do you put a price on a database?
Well, it's very hard to put a price on it. It's going to show up in the bottom line of the dealership, right? Vis-a-vis other attributes, but it's one of those components that I use to explain why the dealership is not going to be discounted. It's one of those things, you know, according to Hague Partners or Kerrigan, Ford stores sell between 3.5 and 4.5 multiple, and I've priced this store at a 5. Well, why? Well, because of the things that we're talking about here. It's better than the average brand store, right? Because of these things.
Without giving away what we do for a living, I'm thinking about selling my store. I'm pretending to be a dealer for half a second.
Yep.
I'm probably a year out. What should, and he contacts you and he says, what should I be doing to get my store ready for the sale?
Well, we've had a whole podcast on preparing your dealership for sale.
Right. But
It's
now
clean
add in the
financials.
value,
It's what's that?
add in how we're going to evaluate and value this business. And if he's got a year to clean up his act, obviously we talked about that podcast too. We're not going to do that again today. But would you nurture him and say, let's build that database? Let's build that wholesale business. You got a year before we know we're going to actually put it on the market.
Absolutely.
Family trust is set up. We got a year to do this. And maybe we shouldn't get into this a lot because this is really what we do for a living.
Well, this is the checklist that we have, right? I
Yes,
mean,
exactly.
this is the the nuts and bolts of what we do is from all the war stories and all the goods and the bads and the uglies over the years, we have a checklist of things that we grade the dealership on, and the ones that are below average or even average, we have to address to be able to answer your question.
Mm. Okay, a little bit of an advertising. Throughout the podcast, you'll see our QR code. And the QR code, click on it. It links directly to us. And with that, we'd love to have you as become one of our fans and members on the QR code. And you will get Hal's wonderful white paper, which is worth every penny that it's written on. And you'll also get our newsletter and everything else that comes from it. So throughout the podcast, you'll eventually see the QR code pop up and then it goes away. That's what it's there for. Or if you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, you get the same benefits. We'd love to have you as part of our team. If you're thinking about it, if you're thinking maybe about it in the next year, 2 years, whatever, as we pointing out today, it is never too early to start marketing your store. And marketing doesn't mean that you have to absolutely run ads selling it. It means getting it ready, dressing it up, cleaning it up, making it happy. And that's really what the value, how we bring up the value of the store. And that's what today's podcast is. How do
Yeah.
you evaluate what my dealership is worth? And those are
Yeah.
some of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah. So let's, if we can, we got what, about 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, about 10.
Let's
Yeah.
move to some of the external factors. A dealership market can be over dealered or under dealered, right? So if it's under dealered, you're going to have more opportunities to penetrate the market, drive market share. There are markets that are high cost markets, and then there's markets that are more reasonably cost markets. We talked about real estate and rent factors last podcast. So, are you in a market that's got a reasonable rent factor for the space that you're operating in? What about taxes? Are you in a high tax market? What about regulatory? All of those costs that that start to eat at your bottom line for, where you're situated and what the municipality charges are all part of the external environment. Here's another one. I mentioned this several podcasts ago. The market segmentation, right? And your brand. So I'll use an overused example, but I'm a Ford dealer in Texas, or I'm a Chevrolet dealer in Texas. Well, the Texas truck market is huge, right? So it's an external factor. My Chevrolet or my Ford store in Texas, all things being equal, it's going to be more valuable than the Ford or Chevrolet store in downtown Los Angeles, which is a very high import market, right? And BMW is going to be more valuable on the East Coast because it's a very high luxury car market. So market segmentation drives dealership of value. I mean, I sell a fair amount of smaller rural stores, and sometimes they're so rural that the buyer loves everything about the store, but it's just too small. It's too small for the family. The schools are not where they want them to be. And so the community amenities also drive. You can't do anything about it as a dealer. It does, where you operate does impact the dealership value. Is the market growing? Are people moving in or are people moving out? Has a play. If the county population is growing and they're building new schools because they can't contain the population and the ones that they have, well, that's a very good sign that your dealership is going to be more valuable in 5 years than it is now, all things being equal, because your environment's changing and your population's changing and the buyers are coming to you. What else?
And I think one of the
Labor,
labor costs, yeah.
technicians, right? Do you have a tech school near you? I mean, where are you going to get these technicians? I mean, I've got a small store right now I'm working with. They have like two master techs and three more that will be master techs. That's unheard of in a small market, right? To have five of your 10 technicians that are master tech, master certified. So all of these things are not maybe so obvious, but they do play into dealership valuation.
I'll give you a couple others.
Please, please.
Used car market.
Mm,
We haven't touched upon that much at all. It's okay to have a strong used car market. You don't
it's
necessarily need to have a strong new car market that dominates everything. It's okay to have a strong used car market, and theoretically, that's what I look for. I look for a strong used car market because when things get a little crazy, things get a little tight, money gets a little thing, used cars are is gonna pull you through. The other
no
thing that we
question.
haven't mentioned at all is ethics. Not ethics, what am I saying? Is it a Hispanic market? Is it a black market? Is it
Diversity. Yeah.
diversity? What type of market is this? And that is another huge factor. We have dealers who do extremely well in the Hispanic market. They speak the language. They have people there. They know the newspapers. They know the media well, and they do extremely well in both Black and Hispanic markets by marketing to these people. And that's a real positive. It's a real factor in evaluating this dealership, who your clients are. And more importantly, how do you reach those clients? And then when that client comes through the door, is he greeted properly by whoever who understands he or she is looking for XYZ in their car and understands not only the location where they live, but can I get this customer bought in the bank? Will I be able to fund him? Will he turn into a good customer from a service? And more importantly, will he become a good referral for me? And that's the other thing that we look at in valuing dealerships. And Hal mentioned it, I think, in podcast 5, is the fact that these dealers have a huge opportunity to be plus or minus when it comes to social media. Are their reviews good? Are they 4 plus in across the whole board, whether it's Google or Carvana, any of the other ones that are out at dealer.com? Number 2, are they getting referrals from these good customers that are giving you good references and reviews. If they're not, then there's something wrong. And Hal mentioned before, your BDC department has to be absolutely on top of everything, not only setting appointments, but follow up, referrals, problem solving. They have to be on top of everything. If they are, then that adds to the value of the dealership. Because as Hal, I think, mentioned in two, or maybe it was three, we hope to take some of those people along with us when we buy that store, because
Yeah.
those are the key factors that made the store successful, and they have a value. So you may not be able to take the key managers in the sense that one may be the owner's son, relative, whatever, and they're going to leave. But you got to look at the rest of the store. As Hal said before, are your master techs staying on board? Are you your service director staying on board? Can he? Is your general manager staying on board? Who happens to have a great relationship with the Hispanic market and the soccer teams and everything else that advertise with Endor for the dealership. So these are factors that we have to look at when Hal is evaluating this dealership and really coming up with what's valuable, what's not valuable. Well, we already said that that list
Yeah.
is valuable. We already
Yeah.
said that
Yeah.
the location where this dealership is located could be very valuable. It doesn't have to be a highline location. In fact,
Right.
you know, that's probably the last thing you want in some of these dealerships. You
Yeah.
want rural America. You want America. You want people who buy cars, who come back service car. You want people who see your banner at the Little League game and go to your dealership the Monday after Sunday. So those are some of the things that Hal puts together before I get a hold of it.
Yeah. No, it's good list. I mean, community presence is absolutely critical. The other thing is too documented processes, you know, and cross training. So when you have a manager out, another person can fill in, and you've got documented processes, and you can step right in, and that's also really important. So
Yeah, and as Hal mentioned before, and again, I'm repeating it, apologize, that's staff. Whether the dealer allows us to talk to them or the dealer has NEDAs, we talked about that in, I think, episode one with the staff. It's a good idea to keep as much of the staff as possible, especially if it's a successful dealer. And
yeah,
there is nothing wrong with keeping the dealer on board for a consultancy. And that's a little secret I shouldn't have given away, but what the heck, Al? We talk about this stuff all day. So some of those things you want to, and that's what we look for when we set the dealership up and we get them up with a price. Okay, Hal, we just got a couple of seconds left.
yeah.
What are we doing? Oh, should I do the shameful plug again? QR code, click it, sign in. You get Hal's white paper, which is worth every bit of your click. What are we talking about next week?
The factors that influence dealership blue sky. Now we've talked about value, and all of the things that we talked about today do influence, but we're going to talk about what specifically influences the multiple, the blue sky multiple, the goodwill value of the dealership.
A lot
I
of you
think
dealers, when you bring that up, Hal, they shake their head. They have no idea what we're talking about.
it's intangible.
It really is.
It is intangible, and it is the one item that is negotiated the most because it's the biggest. I think you think, right? So
Yep, exactly. Good show,
good
Hal.
deal. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Look forward to
Good.
next week
Yes.
and have a great week.
All
And
right.
Hal, I got you penciled in for a guest appearance on October 22nd.
I will send you my engagement contract and fee.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks. Bye,
See you.
everybody.
All right. See you, Greg.
Bye bye.